This edition of Mac Voices is sponsored by Casper, a better mattress for a better night's sleep. To find out more, try one for 100 days and get a $50 discount. Visit casper.com/macvoices. And by Drobo, a family of safe, expandable, yet simple-to-use storage arrays. Visit drobo.com/macvoices and use the offer code VOICES100 for special pricing for Mac Voices viewers and listeners. Welcome to Mac Notables on Mac Voices. This is the Talk of the Mac community. I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, we got him back one more time before the end of 2015. Mr. Ted Landau is back with us. Ted, it's great to have you.
Good to be back, as always.
Yes, it is. It is. I keep dragging you back in. I'm not going to let you go.
It's going to make me quote from The Godfather 3 now.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But you have to do the whole emotive thing. So, Ted, at this point, we have a couple ideas here for things we wanted to chat about. But seriously, you've been out of the game now for about half a year. And I'm kind of curious to see what your reaction has been, how you've handled it. Up till this point, you were in it because you loved it. I think I'm putting words in your mouth, but also because it was partially your job. And so, since you've not had to keep up with everything as part of your job, are you still keeping up with it? And if you are, that's great. And if not, has the pullback affected your view of technology in general and Apple in particular?
Ooh, a lot of questions there.
Yeah.
First of all, actually, I've been retired now for about a year, really. I made the announcement about a half a year ago. You're right about that. But actually, I had been in a practice. I hadn't written anything for the 6 months before I made the announcement. And the announcement was just like confirming what had become obvious in my own mind. Making it public made it feel a little bit different. But in fact, I hadn't written anything. My definition of retirement was I'm not writing anything for money or anything that in any way seeks to get money. That gave me an out of allowing myself to do some writing without violating the idea that I was retired. And I haven't done anything like that since last December. So it's actually been a year.
Wow.
But to answer your question, yes, I still follow everything almost as much as I did when I was not retired. It's usually the first thing I do in the morning is look at the news, somewhat the national and general news, but also especially the Apple news. And of course, my Twitter feed is 90% people in technology, and so as I check through Twitter, I'm getting all sorts of Apple-related stuff, and all the news feeds that I have, Flipboard and stuff like that, is heavily weighted towards technology news, and so yeah, I keep up with it a lot. A couple of things are different. Some good, some not as good. Probably the best thing is that I no longer fear new products, in the sense that for years, whenever Apple announced anything new, it meant work for me. And often under a deadline pressure. Apple would announce something, say, at the Worldwide Developer Conference, and I needed to have a column on my reaction to it within 12 hours because if I waited 24 hours or 36 hours, then everything I said might have been said by somebody else, and then I would be seen just like copying somebody else instead of having an original thought or whatever. So, plus people are more likely to seek out the information, so you get more hits when you come out faster. And you're familiar with all the arguments. So, and the more products that Apple came out with, and the more things I had to cover, the higher the pressure was, and that's all gone now. Apple can come out with 9 updates in one day, and if I don't, feel like dealing with it for a week, nobody cares, including me. It's not like somebody saying, "Well, you have to write an article about this," or not me saying to myself, "I need to write an article about this." So it takes off a lot of pressure. I no longer stress about Apple's update cycle the way I used to. That's probably the biggest difference. Beyond that, I'm trying to think. I guess the other thing is I found, and this is something I don't like, I put off writing more than I would like at this point. I guess, I don't know whether I'd call it laziness or what, but I still do my blog. That was my one out. And I figured, the blog is going to be fun now. I just write whatever I feel like, when I feel like, A lot of it could be about Apple stuff, but I also tend to write about politics and religion and other controversial subjects. And every once in a while, I'll read something, or I'll see something, and in my head I'll say, oh, that gives me an idea of a column that I could write that takes a different slant on things than I've seen other people talk about. And I lay out the whole article in my head, and 2 weeks later I still haven't written it. And by that point, it's stale, and I don't want to write it anymore, and that's it. And if I was still writing like for the Mac Observer or something like that, where I had to produce like 2 columns a week for a while, I wouldn't let that happen, because that would be an idea that could fill one of those 2 columns I had to write, and I'd be typing away as fast as I could to get that thing written. But now, since nobody is pushing me to do it, including myself, it just often gets unwritten. And in some ways, that's kind of sad, because some of the stuff I had in my head seemed like it would be good, and now no one will ever see it. But I don't think too many people are bemoaning that, so it's not like world hunger or something. So, but that I do feel a little bad about that. And the other thing is that sometimes I, and this is true, I think, for all people that enter some form of retirement, there are times when I feel my schedule has gotten too unstructured. That there's something comfortable about busyness. I was often busier than I wanted to be, but there's also a comfortableness about busyness that what your day is going to be. That you're going to be working on this. You don't have to think about what you're going to be doing. You know what you're going to be doing. There are days that I wake up and, Naomi will ask me, what am I going to do today? And it occurs to me that I haven't given it any thought. I could do anything I want. I have nothing, look at my calendar, there's nothing on my schedule for today, and I could just do whatever I feel like. And sometimes that feels good. Sometimes it allows me to do things that I've been wanting to do for years that I hadn't gotten around to do because I'm always busy doing other things. And sometimes it just feels like, I'm sort of wandering without any specific purpose, and I'm looking for something more specific to do. So it has its ups and downs.
Is there any way we can put an appropriate amount of pressure on you to deliver those articles, or to push you to get those articles done? And I'm kind of serious about that. I'm not joking, because it might be good for you. It might be good for all of us.
I don't know. Not really. Not without me coming out of retirement, so to speak. And that's what I want to avoid. So, overall, to be clear, you asked me the question, so I'm trying to weigh the pros and cons. Mm-hmm. But if you were to ask me, like, do I regret the decision, or would I rather go back to working again? The answer is no. I'm happier doing this. It was time for me to do it. I was happy when I wasn't retired, and I just felt that this was the right time to do it, and I'm happy with that as well. I did tell you once that I had an opportunity, so to speak, to work at Apple. They contacted me for a job. It didn't work out for various reasons, but. I said, wow, that would fill up my time. More than I think about. Well, it'd be kind of fun, I suppose, to work at Apple, but at the same time, I think, oh my God, do I really want to? I had never worked a job in my entire life where I essentially would be working like 9-10 hours a day, 5 days a week, or something like that. So when I contrast it to that thought, I think, it's just a lot more relaxing.
Yeah, I don't think there are too many casual jobs at Apple.
No, it would not have been a casual job.
No, I'm not even sure, really. This may not be fair. I don't think there are many casual jobs in tech, but then I look around, Ted, and I start to wonder if there are many casual jobs anywhere anymore that have any level of responsibility. It just seems like the world is so competitive and so pushed to do more, faster, get it done yesterday because we need it, the day before yesterday. I don't know. I don't know what it means to our society, and I don't even know how it really applies to this conversation, other than I just think everybody's busy.
Well, the tech world, I think, is especially like that, but there are other industries are as well. I would say it's probably, there's a lot of reasons for what you're saying, and I think it's true. And one is, I think, technology itself. I think it has allowed us to work at home, which has its advantages. Lots of people don't have to go into an office every day, and sometimes not at all. The whole time I was doing McFixit, for instance, when I was working for Tech Tracker, I think I spent 3 days in their offices the whole 2 years I was doing it. So working at home, and now you have things like your iPhone, which allows you to have a cup of coffee at Starbucks and be checking your email at the same time. And so the end result is you're never disconnected, and therefore you can be working all the time. It used to be, you show up in office at 9 o'clock, you leave at 5 o'clock, and sometimes you take your work home from the office, as the expression went. But in most cases, you could leave it at the office and not worry about it until 9 o'clock the next day. But now, you're constantly available for work, and often at least you're being expected to do it. If there's something needs to be done by tomorrow, and it's not done by 5 o'clock, well, you just take it home, work on it at home until it's done. So I think it does lead to a lot more of that sort of pressure.
What's interesting about that observation, I think, is that we're doing it to ourselves because of just what you said. Well, I need to get it done, for tomorrow at the office. But also, we're checking Facebook and we're checking Twitter. And, some of us are delivering content in various ways. And not content as in, okay, I'm going to review, this microphone right here, but content about, what I'm having for dinner, or, refinishing the basement, or, whatever. That there's pressure to, I don't know if pressure is the right word, but there's a desire to participate in Instagram, in all the social networks. So while you're having that cup of coffee at Starbucks, yeah, you may be working on something for the office, or you may be, doing some of that stuff. And there's no downtime anymore.
Yeah, it's hard. I'm as guilty as anyone. I get up in the morning, and the first thing I do is put my face in front of a screen to check on various things.
But I'm serious. You say that like it's a bad thing, but is it that much different than putting your face in front of a piece of newspaper in the morning?
Yeah, I think it is. I'm not sure why, but I think just the amount of time. I mean, I put my face in front of a newspaper, and maybe I will read the newspaper for a half hour over breakfast, and that's it. Put it away and toss it. But the screen is, you just keep going back to it and back to it and back to it. I get up, I'm on the screen. I go to the bathroom, I'm on the screen. Go have breakfast, I'm on the screen. After breakfast, walk into my office, I'm on the screen. And watch TV, I'm looking at a screen. Sometimes it feels like I spend 90% of my waking hours looking at a screen of one form or another.
And again, I guess, that's just the way things have evolved, because now we have information as such a commodity, a commodity we need to interact with, a commodity that we desire to interact with.
Yeah, well, it's very different from years ago, that's for sure.
Yeah. So do you have any new toys?
Well, after much haranguing with the New York Times, I got a Google Cardboard virtual reality.
Really?
Yeah, it was supposed to come with my Sunday Times, and it never did. And I contacted them, and one of those things where letters went back and forth, phone calls went back and forth. They said they sent it, and they didn't, and so it took several weeks, but I finally got it, and that's okay. It's nothing very exciting for me. It's interesting to the way you can walk around in space, and wherever you're looking, you go up, down, right, left, turn around 180 degrees, whatever, you're seeing a view of the space that changes accordingly. So, the idea is to make you feel like you're actually in that space. But Google Cardboard doesn't quite do it. I think I need a virtual reality viewer a bit more sophisticated than Google Cardboard to really make it feel that way. But it still is interesting the way you can just see all of an environment. It's worth exploring, if nothing else.
Jackie Dove recommended a Google Cardboard on one of the gift shows that we did, and I have to admit, hearing her talk about it, it was the first time I'd become just a little bit intrigued. I've had the opportunity to wear an Oculus Rift. Oculus Rift. Where did that come from? An Oculus, and
it's an Oculus.
Yeah, and it is an interesting thing, but I guess it's almost. I got to wait and see. It's almost too immersive because it completely cuts you off from the outside world. So if you're willing to give yourself over to the experience, that's great. But almost coming back to your point about looking at screens, yes, I'm frequently looking at one screen, but often I'm looking at two, and then maybe doing a third thing on the side. So
yeah, it's more isolating.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're playing something on a Sony PlayStation, for instance, you can be absorbed in that and not easily distracted, but still, someone can walk into the room and see what you're doing. They can stop and watch what you're doing. They can comment, "Oh, that was a good move. You beat that bad guy," whatever. And you can talk to them, and they can, and you can have a discussion about the game probably while it's going on, unless it's a particularly intense game where your reflexes are critical. There's none of that with VR. You're in a box by yourself. No one knows what you're seeing. No one knows what you're doing. You could be waving your hands, and people will think you just look weird with this helmet on and your hands are waving. I mean, it sounds almost like a thing you should do when you're by yourself and no one else is home, because it seems so bizarre what you're doing. But but that's the nature of it.
Yeah. So is it worth, you think? I believe Jackie said they're about $30 each.
Oh, if they're cheaper than that, you can get them for $13.
Okay. Is it worth exploring just for the experience and the fun of it?
Oh yeah, for that price, yeah, for sure. Yeah. I don't have much use for it, but it's fun to see. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, well, it's another one of those emerging technologies, and we've all been promised augmented reality and virtual reality for so long, and I wonder if this is just another one of those false starts, or whether we're actually going to make some progress.
I think next year will be a big year for virtual reality. All signs point to that. So, and this thing coming from Microsoft, from Sony, looks especially exciting.
Tell me about that, because I'm not familiar with that.
It's a Sony VR device that was demoed the other week, I believe, here in San Francisco, and I was reading articles about it in the paper. And it's like a competitor for the Oculus Rift, and but the people were just raving about how immersive it was and how cool it was, and so I'm looking forward to giving it a try.
I wonder if that's I wonder if the primary audience for this is going to be gamers. I'm still waiting for somebody to give us a good example of something that can be done in virtual reality. And I'm not talking about 20 years from now, but something reasonably on the horizon, that it can benefit us immediately and make it practical for maybe not the home user, but the advanced technical user, the business user, that kind of thing.
I can't think of anything for the home user for the moment outside of games. I can think of things that will wow you, like watching some movie-like experience, and you say, "Wow, that's impressive that I can do that." But at a practical level, once the wow factor is gone, why am I going to go back and do this? Do I need to have a spreadsheet in virtual reality? No, I don't think so. So what is it that I'm going to do in virtual reality that would make it a practical advantage to have it? I can't think of anything offhand. I'm sure there will be some. I can think more for business. I can imagine that maybe conferences in some virtual reality setting would be nice, so you can facilitate more of what might feel like a real face-to-face meeting. There might be things in medicine where being able to view something in that sort of perspective would allow, say, a surgeon to see things in a way that they otherwise couldn't, or something like that. So, I can imagine some maybe for actually, this gets back to a game, but I can imagine it would be great for something like flight simulators. Boy, I remember years ago using Microsoft Flight Simulator on early Macintoshes, and some people, I didn't have a talent for it. Some people were quite good at it, but I had so much trouble orienting myself in space because it was all in front of me on the screen. I wanted to look to the side to see what was out my side window. I had to look straight ahead because there was no side window to look at. And so, and if you went upside down, the screen, went upside down, but there was no sensation that you were upside down. You could, if you just happened to glance away from the screen for a second and turn back and it was upside down, it might take you a while before you realized you'd gone upside down. That wouldn't happen if you were really in an airplane. You'd gone upside down. And so I think virtual reality is the first sort of environment where you could really feel like you're flying an airplane and look to the side and see what's on the side, as I couldn't do decades ago. And that could be kind of cool.
Yeah, good point. Good point. It'll be fun to see. It'll be fun to see because there are going to be people that are smarter than both of us combined that have come up with this great new way of doing things. And there'll be about 50 of those, and one or two will take, and that's what we'll have.
Yeah. Well, if it's going to happen, I think in the next year or two, then we're going to see it. It's for starters.
Today's edition of MacVoices is sponsored by Casper, a better mattress for a better night's sleep. To find out more, try one for 100 days and get a $50 discount. Visit casper.com/MacVoices and use the code MacVoices when you place your order. There are plenty of ways to increase your productivity, but there's one sure way to kill it, and that's by not getting a decent night's sleep. Now, I've been known to go to bed late and get up early, so that makes it all the more important that the sleep I do get is as good as I can make it. That's why I love my Casper mattress. You might not think that a mattress can make that big a difference, and you would be dead wrong. I've spent too many nights on less than ideal mattresses that leave me more tired than when I went to bed, and with an aching back to boot. Casper has worked hard to create a new hybrid mattress that combines premium latex foam with memory foam to give you better nights and brighter days. Obsessively engineered and at a shockingly fair price, as they would say. Even better, you don't have to go get a Casper mattress. Your Casper mattress will come to you. Just visit casper.com/MacVoices, pick the size, and get $50 off your purchase by using the code MacVoices. A few days later, your mattress will arrive at your doorstep, and you will have 100 days to try it. No showrooms, no delivery fees, no delivery men to scrape your walls. In the amazingly unlikely event that your Casper mattress isn't everything I say it is, you can return it painlessly. They'll even send someone to pick it up. But that's not going to happen, believe me. You're going to love your Casper mattress as much as I do. So, with no risk, $50 off, free shipping, delivery to your door, and 100 nights to give it a try, what are you waiting for? Go to casper.com/MacVoices right now, use the code MacVoices for the discount, and your Made in America Casper mattress will be on its way. You can thank me later. Speaking of thanks to Casper for a great night's sleep and for their support of MacVoices. So the other thing I thought we might do is kind of do a report card on Apple for the year through the products. You had said that this is something you might be interested in, and I think it's as good a way as any to measure sort of the year in technology, especially from an Apple perspective. How about if we start with the one that I don't know if you have one or not. Have you succumbed to an iPad Pro yet?
No, I had already decided before it came out that I wasn't going to get one. See, that's another advantage of being retired. I can save money. I probably would own an iPad Pro today if I was still actively writing, because I'd feel obligated to have one in order to be able to write about it. And of course, and then my wife would just roll her eyes and say, "Yeah, sure, that's exactly why you're getting it." No other reason I can think of why you would get it. Yeah, you're gonna, but yeah. So I don't need one to write about it anymore, and so I have the luxury of being able to say, unless I really want it, I'm not going to bother with it, and I don't really want it yet. I'm waiting. Maybe someday. I'm not averse to getting it, but for the moment, I'm still happily using my iPad Air, and see no gigantic advantage to getting an iPad Pro. I don't feel like I'm not looking for a substitute for my MacBook. I have a MacBook, and I'm happy to use it when I want a MacBook. I use the iPad Air specifically for things that the MacBook doesn't do, which is a lot. In fact, I use my iPad Air much more than I use my MacBook. I mean, of course, I have a desktop Mac too. If my MacBook was my only Mac, I'd be using it a lot. But I have a desktop Mac, an iPad, and a laptop. And of the three devices, the laptop gets the least amount of use. So I'm not looking for a replacement, and so I just didn't see any big need to get one. That said, I mean, I did play with it in the store, and I've read things about it, and you know, almost every review I read, not every, but almost every review I read, the headlines even were almost identical. They said, you know, it's a great machine, but it's not a replacement for your MacBook yet. And except for one article, I think by Bruce Fraser, or I forget, who somewhat facetiously took the opposite turn and asked the question, can a MacBook replace your iPad? And he went into all the ways in which an iPad can do things that the MacBook can't. The iPad has the touch screen, the iPad has the cellular connection. He went on all the things that he can do with his iPad that a MacBook can't compete with. And so, someday the MacBook will be as good as the iPad, but it isn't here yet. So I think, obviously, trying to be a little funny on the take, but it was a point worth making. But for most people, they've commented that, if you expect to be able to throw away or sell your MacBook and get an iPad Pro, don't. Isn't ready to do that. And most of the articles I read focused on the hardware limitations, which are less and less these days. The iPad Pro is certainly a leap forward from the iPad. But for me, the biggest reason I think that I can't use an iPad as a replacement for Mac is software. The software still drives me crazy when I'm trying to do serious work. I like when I'm working, like right now, for instance, I'm just looking at my desktop computer. I have my email program open, I have Twitter open, I have Skype open to talk to you, I have Safari open with several windows, each of them have a few tabs. I have a desktop in the background which has several dozen files and folders on it, where I can double-click instantly any file on the desktop and launch it. I have Pages open in the background I see there. I have like more than half a dozen applications that are actively open and easily accessible. All the content is visible. I can drag a photo from one application to another application, and the photo just appears in the other application. I can drag text from one window to another window and see it in the other window. I mean, they're just the ease with which I can do complex tasks, and the ease and the accessibility of the file system that isn't hindered by all of Apple's sandboxing and other restrictions on iOS devices, makes a world of difference. And when I try to do, quote unquote work, which tends for me to be writing, but when I try to do any sort of work like that, I always gravitate to the desktop. There's no, given if a MacBook and an iPad were in front of me and someone said, you have to write an article that has to be laid out and combine graphic and text or something like that, just to take one example, and you can choose to do it on the iPad or the MacBook, I would never choose the iPad. 100% of the time I choose the MacBook.
And I would agree with that. I think there's some distinct advantages to the iPad. The article you mentioned about, is the one replacement for the other, and then flipping it around is a really interesting point. But if we can get into why. But I think you're right. I think it's still a product in development. It's still trying to figure out what's going on. The split screen, split views, and all of that is a huge leap forward. It's a leap forward on the Air, and it's especially a big leap forward on the Pro. There's no question about that. So I think we're moving in the right direction. Apple is not willing to give up some of its original vision, and definitely not willing to give up some of the security issues, which in the world today, I'm not sure that's a bad thing. I'm not sure it may not be better to go at 5 miles an hour ahead instead of 20 and make sure that you remain safe and sane, as opposed to having something that could either leak personal information or confidential information, or maybe worse yet, eat your information and leave you with just a hunk of glass.
Yeah, I'm always, as you know, on the fence with that stuff. I recognize the value of that, and I don't want to discount it, but as someone who used a Mac for decades without all these restrictions and did just fine, I always hesitate to say how much that stuff is really necessary. And of course, Ash Athley's been in the news recently for the Mac. Speaking of that, getting away from the iPad, a couple of prominent people dropped out of the Mac App Store, developers, and cited among other things, the security restrictions and the sandboxing and so on, and the inability to include certain features in their software that would have been incompatible with what Apple allows and all that sort of stuff, as reasons for dropping out of the store. And I don't know. I can go to their website and buy the software. It's not a big deal to me. I don't need the Mac App Store. In fact, I rarely use it. I use it for Apple stuff because that's the only way to get it. and for a couple of other pieces of software. But by and large, given a choice between getting it from a vendor who I know, and I'm not talking about getting it from the dark web or something like that, but buying software, going to the Smile website to buy Smile software or something like that, versus getting it from the App Store. Given a choice, I'd get it from the vendor.
I agree, but there's also the thing that we're talking about trusted companies. Smile, obviously. Oh boy, Agile Bits with 1Password, obviously. I just talked to Oliver Breidenbach of Boinks, obviously, no problem. But there are those independent developers and all the one-horse guys who maybe are new to the game. And I don't know them yet. You don't know them yet. None of us know them yet. They don't have a reputation. This might be their first or second piece of software. And so, yeah, you're a little more hesitant to do some of that stuff. And so having the App Store there feels
I'm not
good.
opposed to the App Store.
Yeah.
I mean, people who want it for the reasons you're saying, that's fine. I just hope the time doesn't come when that's the only way you can get software. I don't think it will on the Mac, but it is the only way you can get software on iOS devices, getting back to the iPad. That continues to be a bit of a problem as well, I think, but not as much, because if I was using the iPad for work, maybe it would be, but there aren't a lot of apps that I can imagine for the uses I make of the iPad that I can't get already through the App Store. The App Store is pretty amazing.
Yeah. And unless we're going to replace the entire iOS operating system with something else that maybe had different file management capabilities. Even then, though, you would have a lack of storage on the devices. Because
that's another thing, actually, that I don't like about the iPad, and that does get to the hardware. People don't talk about too much, but there's no external storage for the iPad. If you want to back up your whatever, something that you don't want to just back up through the typical iOS backup through iTunes or whatever, or iCloud, or if you just want to have more stuff than can fit on your iPad that you're occasionally going to use, it's very awkward. There's no USB ports. There's no Thunderbolt ports. And there's no way to directly access. I mean, we've been through this before, but you're getting me onto this hobby horse. You attach a USB drive to a Mac, and the drive appears on the desktop, and you can double-click it and open it, and you can drag a file to the USB drive and see it copied there and know that it's there. And you even if you can, in some weird sense, attach either wirelessly or through the Lightning port an external drive to an iPad, it only works through an app. If you get a Seagate wireless drive, you have to have the Seagate app to access it. There is no. It's not like it just generally appears somewhere the way it does on a Mac, and I find that frustrating as well. So the whole operating system just doesn't make it for me when you're trying to get work done. It's fine for playing games and reading newspapers and surfing the web and checking your email and the other things that I can do with it, but it's not for getting work done for me. And since I'm not doing that much work anymore, I use the iPad a lot.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, again, sort of working backwards. How about the Apple TV? Have you acquired a new one?
Yes, I have the new Apple TV, and I like it very much. I think the voice technology is tremendous, and with the latest update, so music works with it now even better. The voice is one of those things that you have to sort of force yourself, at least for me, to use at first, because you don't remember that you can use it. You're so used to not having voice as an option that you just, by habit, don't use it. And once you can get in the habit of using voice, it is very powerful. And you can do things that would be very hard to do at all without it. The sort of thing like I want to see, I don't know, I want to see Jimmy Stewart movies that were made after 1950 and have so-and-so as a co-star or something like that. You can just say that, and there's a good chance that you'll get a reply that's relevant. And there's no way that you could even type that in to a search without voice. So I think it's really cool. I I thought one of the things I always complained about in columns and stuff was that I wanted to see Apple have an app store for the Apple TV. So it could compete better with Roku. It could have games. It could be a game machine. Blah 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 blah. Well, the Apple TV does all of that. It answered every thing on my wish list. But I'm finding for now, I think it could change in the year ahead, but for now, I'm not really spending a lot of time downloading new apps for the Apple TV or playing a lot of games on the Apple TV. Maybe it's just too new, and I have to wait for the apps that I'm going to be more interested to appear over the next few months. But I find that I am content with an even smaller number of apps on the new Apple TV than all the channels that existed on the old Apple TV. The other thing is, and I know we talked before that I got a new TiVo system this year, which I absolutely adore. And I'm finding that I'm sticking with TiVo now more than going to the Apple TV. It used to be that every time I wanted to watch something on Netflix, I'd go to the Apple TV because it was absolutely, of all the devices that I had, including my toaster oven that can play Netflix, that the Apple TV environment was the best one. But I'm finding that the one in TiVo is pretty darn good too, if not better. And TiVo has support for Amazon Prime Video as well, and it has a universal. It doesn't search HBO or Showtime the way the Apple TV can. But if you don't have those channels, then it may not matter as much. But it will search. It will do a universal search that searches Netflix, Amazon, your cable providers on demand, anything that's streaming or playing on a channel in the next week or two. So you can say, I want to watch this movie, and if there's anywhere in its universe that it exists, it'll find it. So it's pretty cool in that respect, and I don't have to shift out of TiVo to play Netflix anymore, and especially if I'm going between between Netflix and Amazon, which I frequently do. I can stay all in one environment. So I'm actually finding that I'm using the Apple TV less than before I had the TiVo, even with the new Apple TV. The TiVo, of course, can't access my iTunes library. It doesn't have voice commands yet, and so there are some cool things about the Apple TV. So I use both, but I don't see Apple TV becoming my sole or even primary means of interacting with the TV world until, at the very least, Apple can come out with their sort of cable competitor package that's been rumored for the last year or two.
Yeah, and at least at the moment, looks like it's been scuttled primarily because of the content providers, not anything Apple can control.
And speaking of TiVo, again, I have to rave about the other thing. Speaking of cable computers, excuse me, the other thing that TiVo is great with, sort of like a Slingbox and other similar devices, is that I can play anything that I've recorded or anything that's playing live on television. I can play from my iOS device anywhere. So if I was at your house right now, and I wanted to play something that I recorded, that the TiVo automatically recorded last night, I can just do it on my iPad. It's really quite impressive. Other devices can do that, I know, as well. I don't mean to say that TiVo is the only one, but TiVo puts it all together in a very nice package.
TiVo always has had a superior operating system for TV consumption and all, and we've talked about that too in the past. I wish Apple could have bought TiVo and absorbed it without modifying too much. Maybe better that it was just independent, could go its own way. But it's certainly went its own way in a very rough sea of TV evolution as things are turning out. So
it's actually I'm just going to belabor a little bit more because I'm following the Golden State Warriors basketball on their amazing streak. And the other day I wanted to see part of a game and I wasn't home, and I wanted to watch it on my iPad, which I had with me. And I remembered that the TV station, the local TV station, the carriers the Warriors game, said that if you have the NBC Live Extra app, all the games are streamed through that. So I said, cool. and I went to do it, and I had never used it for the Warriors basketball before, and it started putting me through a whole bunch of hoops. Sign in this, sign up for that, enter this, and of course, then the last one was, as is often the case with these stations that are on your cable network, I had to prove that I had a Comcast cable connection that carried the channel before it would let me view it. And then it required that I remember my Comcast password, which I didn't for the moment, and of course I wasn't home, so I couldn't get it. And I've had, and then I said, oh, wait a minute, I have the TiVo app. I can use the TiVo streaming to just say I want to watch the game, and bingo! And in less than a minute, I was watching the game with no restrictions, passwords, questions asked whatsoever. So, I mean, just another example of how sweet it works.
And that's something that I think everybody's got to figure out. I think they've got to figure out how to get this content to us easier, faster. I mean, and that's in a way, I'm surprised TiVo isn't leveraging that a little bit more, that kind of advantage. Because even with some of the Apple TV stuff, same thing. You have to prove you have this access or that access. Too many passwords, too many restrictions, and yes, I know somebody has to make money on this stuff. But you gotta find a way to make it easier, or we're going to go find something else. You found TiVo. Mm-hmm. There you go. There you go.
So even though it's not new, that's one of my gadgets that I'm enjoying more than I ever have before. So.
Okay, good. Let's see. Well, the iPhones we've talked about probably quite a bit. You're still happy with your current selection?
Oh yeah, I'm happy. I'm still happy I didn't get the larger one. I might get a larger one year just to try it out for the year and make sure that I am correct in my assessment. But so far I don't regret it. The one thing I'll say about the iPhone, I think that the new iPhone is absolutely great, and for all the reasons we talked about, and just having a camera around. And this is not unique to the new iPhone, but I'll just say that having a camera in your pocket all the time just makes a world of difference. It's just the number of ways in which you use a camera, that not just to take photos, like you want to take a photo from a memory of your visit to the Eiffel Tower or something like that, but you're at a store and you want to remember some brand of cereal that you never heard of before. You just take a picture of the brand of cereal, and then you can check it when you get home. I mean, just all these ways that you can just do things that are there because the darn camera's always in your pocket. And so yes, and I think the iPhone 6 was fantastic, and the iPhone 6 Plus the iPhone 6s is even better. The one thing about the iPhone 6s I will mention is I'm having a little bit of trouble. Trouble isn't the right word, but habit-wise, I'm having a little bit of trouble with the Force Touch idea. I find that I forget that there's nothing wrong with it. It works when I try it. I'm not being critical of the feature, but it's just that I'll be working with an app, and then I'll read an article about the app, and the article will mention, well, if you use Force Touch here, this pops up. Oh, never occurred to me to even try that. Yeah, I forgot. Oh yeah, it's not like Force Touch isn't something that advertises itself on the iPhone screen. It's not like a little arrow appears that says tap here for Force Touch or something like that. So you just have to know that it's a possibility and get used to the. And so you begin it's almost like back to square one. Now when I open an app, if I can remember, one of the first things I do is just stick my finger all over the place. And what happens if I press hard here? What happens if I press hard here? And try to get used to the idea that Force Touch is an option, because it's useful and it works, but I just have to remember that it exists.
It is a problem, Ted, and I sometimes think that our pace of change has become just a little too quick, because we have the new capability of Force Touch and 3D Touch, of course, on the Macs, and with the new Magic Trackpads, or is it the other way around?
Yes.
Other way around. Sorry. Yes.
Yeah, 3D Touch.
3D Touch. Yeah, and
I'm using the terminology incorrectly. Sorry.
Well, when I went right along with you, okay. But I feel like the developers need to get time to build this stuff in, but then the developers aren't doing quite as good a job as I think they should with educating us. And too often we're on to the next big thing, because I'm with you. The more I use Force Touch and 3D Touch, especially on the iPhone, it's like, this is great. I just have to remember to sort of go and look for it. But it's almost sort of like the right click used to be, or the whatever it is on the trackpad. You got to remember to do it, and then it's like, wow, there's all this stuff under there that I don't have to go up and pull menus down for. There are even sometimes some things that are only available there. So I don't know how to solve that problem other than just say, okay, you need to watch this 30-second video, this 45-second video, which of course none of us ever do when you first launch an app. You're too anxious to get in. Oh, I'll figure it out later, and you lose that opportunity.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And speaking of features, actually, that don't get that much use, one other thing about the 6S is live photos. And that has to be high on my list of the most useless new feature that I can recall ever existing. First of all, I can't, the number of times that I would actually care to have a photo that has a couple of seconds of video associated with it is like 0.1% of the time. And the other thing is that I have found that at least as the last time I tried, getting the photos from your iPhone to your Mac and maintaining the live photo aspect is often not easy to do, especially if you do. I tend to, for instance, use image capture to download photos from my iPhone because I don't want to put. It's just a force of habit of what I've gotten into this whole procedure where I put them into image capture. I go through them. I throw out all the photos that are crappy and that I don't want, and then just the ones that are good I put into the Photos app. I suppose I could cull them directly from Photos, but I like it this way better. It is sort of like the bad photos never contaminate the app. But I found when I did that the first time, all the live photo things separated out as movie files, and so I had an image and a movie file instead of a live photo. And then getting them to rejoin again in Photos didn't automatically happen, and it just after a while I just said, I don't care about this feature anyway. Why should I care about preserve? So I pretty much have turned off live photos, and I'll probably never use it again.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I think I can think of a few things where it might be interesting, but for the most part, I've found them just not quite useless. But I can't find a use for them.
That's useless.
Well, yeah, maybe so, or I just haven't figured it out yet. It's a neat little parlor trick, but yeah, I guess they had to come up with a feature, but I'm with you. It doesn't do it for me.
Yeah, I'd like to have been a fly on the wall, so to speak, for the discussion of that feature. Where I could just imagine them saying, I don't think they did because I don't think Apple really works this way, but it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility. They say, well, this feature isn't really useful, but it'll sell iPhones because it'll be impressive in the advertisements. And,
yeah. And folks, if you have a use, Ted and I would both like to know, so we can use it too. So let us know.
Send us your iPhone, and we'll see how it works.
Okay, so we're starting to run out of time, and I don't want to skimp on anything. How about if we just attack the Mac line overall? Satisfied with?
I do want to mention the iMac. It's good that you brought that up.
Please.
I had been waiting for the Skylake, I can't even say it at this late point in the session, the Skylake processors to appear on the iMac line to get a new one. I got a new Retina display iMac for Naomi a few months ago, and it's really great. And I thought for myself, I'm still using the 2009 Mac Pro, getting kind of creaky now. It's what's going on 7 years old, and I never thought I'd own a Mac for 7 years. But and so I said, I'll replace it with a new Mac Pro. It's always been a struggle to want to do it because I really like all the internal hardware flexibility of the Mac Pro. But I decided, okay, I'm going to get an OWC Thunder Bay to house external drives, and it'll be almost as good as having a Mac Pro. And in some ways better because it'll be faster and have the Retina display and all the other cool stuff that the new Macs have. And I was going to order it like a couple of weeks ago, and I keep putting it off. And the reason I keep putting it off has to do with the storage. I spent a lot of time trying to decide, should I get the 2 or 3 terabyte Fusion drive, or should I get the 1 terabyte SSD drive? And the more I read and the more I thought about it, the more it became clear that the SSD drive was the way to go. Especially, you read the specs, all the reviews say that Apple did something to how the SSD drives work on the 2015 Macs, and they are significantly gads faster than the SSD drive on the 2014 Macs. And you don't get that with the Fusion drive. And I said, well, I'm not sure. My wife has a Fusion drive on her Mac, and I don't complain about how slow it is when I use it. So it's not, I'm not the most demanding user in the world. Maybe I'm just seeking speed that I'll never take advantage of anyway. But that's who I am. It's like buying a Ferrari and then driving it for 35 miles an hour to go to the grocery store again. So I try and so I finally decide, okay, SSD drive is the way to go. But then I'm looking at $700 more to get the SSD drive. And then it's still only 1 terabyte. And I was planning on having like about 800 gigabytes of information on the drive. When I checked all the things I wanted to put on the drive, it was adding up to about 800 gigabytes. So the drive's going to be almost full for the day I open it. If I could get a 2 terabyte SSD drive and have it be only $400 more, I'd get an iMac tomorrow. But a 1 terabyte SSD drive for $700 more, I've been hesitating. And then you start reading, it doesn't have Thunderbolt 3, which is around the corner. It doesn't have USB-C, which is a coming thing apparently. So in some ways, Apple did not put the latest and greatest technology into this new iMac. And it makes you wonder whether this is just a holding pattern iMac, and maybe next spring there'll be a real overhaul of the iMac line, and maybe I should wait till next spring, and maybe SSD prices will come down, and maybe there will be a 2 terabyte option, and maybe pigs will fly. So and in the meantime, I sit and my Mac Pro is still chugging along, and so I sit and mull the decision.
You sound like every other person I know that's looking to buy a new Mac. You just when should I jump in? How should I jump in? Should I wait for the next processor? Should I wait for any of the options you talked about? And my advice, I don't know where I got it. Somebody gave it a long time ago. But if you need it right now, go and get it and don't worry about it. But if you don't, then you can comfortably wait. And it sounds like you can comfortably wait.
Yeah, that's good advice, and it's advice I've personally given to other people as well. I'll tell people there's always going to be a new Mac next year. If you wait for if you say you don't want to get one until the new Mac comes out, you'll never get a new Mac, because as soon as the new one comes out, there'll be another new one around the corner. So yes, that's true. On the other hand, there are a lot of nice things about the Retina display iMac that I'm missing out on. The Retina display being the first one. Yeah. And so, the longer I sit with this Mac Pro, the longer I don't get to enjoy the benefits of a Retina display, whether I need it or not. So, something to consider.
One thing that almost takes us back to the beginning, which is a good place to wrap up. You mentioned you were talking about the iPad and your MacBook. I've honestly forgotten. Did you get one of the new MacBooks, or are you talking about a legacy MacBook?
I'm talking about a 13-inch MacBook Pro. That's what I have.
Okay, all right.
Not the 12-inch Mac.
Right. Okay.
That's 13-inch MacBook Pro, and love it. It's great. Yeah.
Yeah. I still live out of a laptop primarily, and I just think Apple does such an amazing job with these machines, because they are desktop equivalents in so many ways. If you don't mind spending the money, you can get an adequate amount of storage, not an abundant amount of storage, but an adequate amount of storage to put things on. And then between Dropbox and Transporter and iCloud and some of the other places, you can offload a few things. So,
speaking of one more thing, I'll tell you. Speaking of the MacBook, just tell you a story about sort of how stupid can you be? Wait till the nickel drops, sort of thing. When Naomi was getting her new iMac, we debated for a while whether she would be happier with a laptop or not, because she was using my laptop more for when she wanted to work in another room instead of at her desk, and for traveling and stuff like that. I said, I know you like the iMac and you like the large screen, but maybe you'd be happier with a laptop. And couldn't decide. And finally, the nickel dropped, so to speak. I said, as I told you earlier today in this session, of the 3 devices that I have, the MacBook is the one I use the least. The problem was I didn't want to, give Naomi access. Not that I'm worried about what she see, but I just didn't want. I didn't want my all the stuff that I keep on my MacBook to be combined with all the stuff that she was going to do, and have half the desktop would be her files and half the desktop would be my files, and so I was reluctant to just let her use it whenever she wanted for that reason. And then just a nickel drop. I could create a separate account for Naomi. This is that's been in the MacBooks for 20 years. It's not like this is some new thing or something like that. It's just I'd never had a reason to worry about that because we don't have any kids in the house anymore, and Naomi and I have our separate computers, and so it's never been an issue. And so I can create a separate account for you, and then the MacBook is sitting doing nothing most of the day anyway because I'm not using it that much. So and then you can just use it. And so we did that, and it's just been a perfect solution. So she got a new iMac, which she loves, and when she needs the laptop, she just switches over to her account, and all is well. So yeah, sometimes you have to remember features that are 20 years old. So
yeah, we're right back to that whole thing of educating ourselves.
Yeah.
So overall, what kind of year do you think it's been for Apple? What kind of grade would you give Apple? I mean, we could debate a lot of individual characteristics, but just overall, what do you think?
I think it's been a good year. I don't know, maybe a B. I think if I'd say, I think Apple continues to solidify their lead in the iPhone market. I mean, in the smartphone market with their iPhone 6s. I think it's a great successor to the iPhone 6, and I think they will maintain that in the year ahead. I think the iPad Pro is a move in the right direction, filling a market that was becoming a little bit more interesting with the Microsoft Surface and things like that, and answering people who want to, for whatever reason, use an iPad instead of a MacBook as their primary computer now have a better way to do so. And hopefully it'll reverse a trend of declining iPad sales, because the last thing I want to see is Apple abandon the iPad because of poor sales, because I use it all the time, so I don't want them to stop making it. So I don't think there's any serious danger of that happening anytime soon, but still. So I think that was good. The iWatch came out this year, not the biggest product that they've ever had in terms of sales, but I think it's a solid thing. I have an iWatch. I think it's great. I'm glad I have it. And that's their first major new product, I think, since Steve Jobs died. And I think it has to be counted as a success. Maybe not a runaway success, but certainly a success. And I think it's going to just get more popular in the year or two ahead. I think the new Apple TV is a significant advance over the other one. And still ways to go for that device, but I think that was a solid upgrade. So overall, yeah. The Mac Pro, speaking of Mac Pros, the new Mac Pro sits around and twiddles its thumb somewhere off in La La Land, as far as I can tell. But aside from that, they have a really strong lineup, and every one of those products is successful and gotten better this year.
For all the reasons you said, I too had it as a B. I don't think it's been their best year. I think there have been some stumbles and there have been some areas that have been overlooked, but I think they've introduced new things and they've broken some new ground. So sometimes, like you say, with the watch, totally new ground. In other places, they've just gone off road a little bit and tried to pave some new areas. So I think it's been a good year. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens in 2016 with the advancement of all the other things, and who knows what other products they might come out with. So.
Yeah, and I listening to you makes me want to add also. I didn't mention software. I don't think it was a spectacular year for software, especially El Capitan. I've had the new Photos and the iCloud photo library, and iTunes continues to be a sore point for many people. Kirk McLaren has practically made a career writing about things that don't work with iTunes, and so I think that they could have done more and a cleaner job of some of the Mac software, not so much the iPhone software, but the Mac software in particular. So that detracted from it being an A year, partly for me.
Yeah, I'm hoping maybe that 2016 will be the year of some better software. Now, see, I haven't had any trouble with El Capitan itself, but some of the components, like you say, iTunes, the photos, as different photos parts of it, yeah, there have been some challenges there. So I'm hoping maybe the trend will continue, that we won't necessarily see a lot of new flashy features, but we'll get some of these locked down so they work the way we want them to.
Well, this could be a subject for the next time we get together, but for someone who made their career out of troubleshooting, I can't tell you the number of times that I have had problems in the last month or two that seem to have no explanation, and that some of them I still haven't been able to fix. It's just been incredible. Well, one involves actually photos, which I don't. We're out of time, so I won't go into it now. But and even when I go online to find out how to fix some of these things, it's frustrating because even if there's a solution, nobody knows why it was wrong. Someone will say, "Well, if you restart your computer, the problem will go away," or if you rebuild your photos library, the problem will go away. Okay, that's great, but why did I get this weird error message to begin with? Why was it necessary for me to rebuild my photos library? Where did it come from? What's the genesis of the error? What went wrong? Nobody knows online, anyway, that I've been able to find, and sometimes nobody even knows how to fix the things, and so that's been pretty frustrating.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Then we have something to look forward to when you come back.
Okay.
Great.
I presume that will be after the holidays, so have a good holiday.
You do the same. I hope you have a safe and good one. And I don't guess you'll be making a trip to CES.
No, I thought about it, but again, it's one of those things like, well, why? so I can gamble. That would be the main reason.
Well, okay, that's good. Well, the casinos will be relatively empty because everybody will be at the convention center.
Ride that big Ferris wheel or whatever it is that wasn't there last time.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Well, if you decide to come, let us know.
Okay.
Maybe we'll put you to work. No, that's right. You don't want to work. Never mind.
But if you pay for my expenses, I'll come.
I'll buy you dinner. How's that?
No, it's not good.
No, it's not going to do. Okay. Ted, thanks so much. It's great to see you.
Okay, me too.
See you again.
Mm-hmm.
Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is Mac Notables on Mac Voices. We will be back with more. Ted will be back. I'll be back. We hope you'll be back. Thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for links, show notes, to subscribe, to connect with Chuck on Twitter, Google+, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and the Mac Voices blog. Subscribe to our weekly newsletter, the Mac Voices Dispatch, to stay up to date on all the latest Mac Voices news from our front page or at macvoices.com/newsletter. Do more with your Apple tech by subscribing to the free Mac Voices magazine on Flipboard by visiting macvoices.com/magazine. Advertising and sponsorships handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.